Good afternoon. Today is Monday, June 1st, 2026 at 5 p.m. We are in the Bruxville Heights TLC. Not sure what our address is here.
376.
376 Mill Road, Broadview Heights, Ohio 44147. This is a special meeting of the Board of Education pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 121.22. The board may only discuss and act upon the specific items listed in the official notice of this meeting. The purpose of this special meeting is for campus master plan discussion, financial review. This meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. Please note that public participation is not scheduled for this special meeting. This meeting will be live streamed via YouTube and will also be recorded for later viewing. Please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel where all recordings are posted. Item 1B, please stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 1C, roll call.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mrs. Gaelic,
Yes.
Mrs. Kwiatkowski,
Yes.
Ms. O'Mara,
Yes.
Mr. Dosen.
Yes. Item 2, work session. I'll turn it over to Jeff and the company.
Well, first of all, thanks for making time for this work session and then also putting up with the relocation due to our little snafu today with our fiber line. So we just wanted to have this work session so we could just have some conversation about our financial status, where we stand at this time of the year, as well as going into next school year, because as we've been talking for some time, at least Craig and I for some time, we do need to start honing in on some possible decisions or at least conversations as to where we need to land as far as a levy cycle. And that time is coming for us, as we've said and been pretty forefront with our community, that we have been very fortunate to it will have been 10 years next spring since the last time we were on the ballot for new operating plan. Obviously in 17, 18 was the bond issue. So we want to have some conversation around the financial review and update, but then I also asked Brian Costa to stop by and just share some campus master plan discussion or lead us in some discussion. And I'll have Craig bring up the map so we all know and can see what they're referencing when we're talking about this. But before we really get into that, the map and the campus master plan at large, Brian, if you don't mind kind of giving the board and our communities a little update where we stand with the Hilton driveway, maybe also a couple of other projects that's kicked off this week as well.
Right.
Yep, that's pretty fine.
All right, so campus master plan, Hilton driveway, we're making very good progress. If you've seen it, a lot of earthwork going on. We're shipping out a lot of dirt. The roundabout's taking formation. We unfortunately hit a fiber line over the weekend trying to take advantage of the nice weather, put the internet down, but we're working through the tie-in of the existing drive. Hopefully end of this week we'll start to see a little more progress with proof rolls and sub bases getting installed. Light pole bases are already being installed and the construction is progressing on as it should. Last week and this week is awesome construction project. Right now we're on schedule for it, but we still have a lot to go. You know, we have 2 more months before the tentative completion date is. So we're moving right along. We have a pending change order for we've been calling it the Y. The area where the pavilion's at over where the stadium is, to ease that curve around. We're working through final prices, trying to negotiate back and forth. They do not see there's an issue with the schedule, getting that open in time. Sequentially, they will do that work once the pavement comes there and they'll pave that last. They want one mobilization for the paver. So that project is moving along accordingly. It stays that way.
Any things that have changed along the way, like I know that we did upgrade an electrical box.
Yep, so minor things, we had $120,000 contingency in there. That is, we did an electrical box, we did stabilize and dry some soil out. Let me step back to the electrical box. So the existing main distribution panel at the board office will supply the light poles down the road. It was thought that there was enough room to add another circuit in there for all the lights. When they opened up the panel, it just didn't have enough space in there. The panel's so old, usually you can buy an adapter for it, you can't even buy the adapter. We're gonna pull out the whole panel. It'll be a day where the board office, we're actually shooting for June 19th at the board office. It's the power shut off. They put the new panel, main distribution panel in there, make the switch over, and then now we have a new breaker for all our light poles. Couple other minor allowance change orders that we have that are typical with construction. Couple $1,000 here, couple $1,000 there. You address them. That's why you put the allowance in there, so you don't have to ask for a couple $1,000.
Our friends at Chippewa Hills HOA.
We had some rain events that did make their pond some silt wash down into it. We've had the engineer out a couple times, issue some reports. The contractor is aware, and they will continue to be a good neighbor, doing whatever they can to correct what failures have been in the system. One of the pipes was not filled in time, and all the sediment washed down the pipe down into their pond. So I know they will issue a formal response to the HOA and to the engineers. Report, and whenever we get that, HOA will most likely say thank you very much.
And tennis courts, they started ripping out poles today as well.
Looks a lot different than it did last week. So fence came down, poles are coming out. I called the third-party testing agency, told them to please be on site Thursday when they will be milling off the top course of tennis court and asphalt. That way they are on site to inspect the subbase as a third-party inspector. And then shortly following that, they'll compact it back down and re-asphalt on top of it.
And that's when it sits for 30 days after they put the asphalt down,
That's
right?
when it sits and cures.
Yeah.
So the 30 days may not be a full 30 days. It can go from 14 to 30.
Okay.
So it'll sit. You'll get asphalt, and then all of a sudden you're going, where'd they all go? Just needs that asphalt needs to cure.
We had a couple that was playing tennis on the courts the other day when there was no fencing and no nets and everything else. They were hitting the ball back and forth. So we'll have to make sure we keep them off when we lay the new asphalt.
Yeah.
Some signage. Went by, but that was kind of odd. They're playing tennis and there's no net. So
I
What
had
about the drainage part? When is that getting done?
so they'll do that after the proof roll.
After.
After the proof roll. And then they owe us, the contractor owes us a film of all the drainage once it's complete. Once proof rolls in, they will come in and film all the drainage to ensure that it wasn't jeopardized during the proof roll and asphalt process.
So in your opinion, Brian, we're taking all the necessary steps just to document what we find when they tear it up, and then also once they're done before they lay the asphalt.
Correct. It'll be most likely after the asphalt they do it. But they will provide us the document needed that says, hey, this is installed and it's not going to, there's no bellies in it. There's no pipe. If they oval with too much weight on it, they will drain properly.
And David Riley has been in contact with counsel for the other party, just making them aware of when we're doing things. We gave them ample time from the end of the season. We shut the courts down before starting the work, that if they wanted to do any additional testing, they could have come and done any of that. And to our knowledge, they didn't do any testing. They took some photos.
They took some photos. We requested that if they do come to site, that they sign in at the board office. That way we just know they're there. They did come to the board office today. But again, they're just taking pictures there and actively doing it. So I think they're just documenting. Same thing with pictures if they want to, whenever we have that discussion.
Awesome.
Would
Appreciate
it be
it.
helpful to have a sign made for our community members to please not use the facility and direct them to, the center of town? There's other tennis courts that can be used.
I'll work with the contractor, and maybe put construction site do not enters up,
Right,
and then the community can,
because they do get creative with
yeah.
how the facility, stuff should.
I did have a very long conversation with a community member about the tennis courts that was actively involved before. It's definitely, I like talking to the community member, so I find him as although it was an hour and a half call, it was definitely beneficial for the project.
Any other questions you have for Brian about where we stand with those projects?
So the
Or-
dirt, how much of the dirt is going off site? That's sort of where Hilton was now on the,
A lot of that will come off, some of it's topsoil, so a couple of those piles will get redistributed, but they have been trucking a lot of dirt off, and we knew that going into the project. Ideally, we would want to keep it on site, but there's nowhere on the site to put that amount of dirt without creating a whole new project. Or stepping on our toes if there were future campus master plan projects in the way. When we demoed Hilton, we graded that to be a field with topsoil, so it would be nice and soft. If anybody wanted to use it for like a youth sporting event or a practice field. So to put all that dirt over there would have not been a good idea. And then on this campus, we're just nowhere to stick tons and tons of dirt.
Else? Thank you, Brian. I appreciate that. Just give us a quick update. And do you have that map, Craig, that you're able to bring up? So the other really discussion about campus master planning was just at this past coffee chat, I had some new individuals, community members who were there, and they husband and wife came and they were locked and loaded with like 4 great questions. And just asking the directed question was, why in the campus master plan are you going to work on athletic facilities before your middle school? Because it's an educational facility. And I said, I appreciate the question. I said, we've begun having those conversations. So when we did the master plan, they numbered phases of it, but we also gave the engineers and architects the idea of, we want to do this in pieces. So just because it's 1 through 7 doesn't mean it has to be done 1 through 7. We can so choose to do whichever pieces we want. But just so we're all speaking the same language, phase 1 was the demo of Hilton, which is complete. Phase 2 is the Hilton driveway, which is, under construction. Phase 3, if you see up there, is actually the area around the middle school, which would be the new bus drive and loop and the parking lots. 4 goes back down to baseball, softball. 5 is then the competition field, practice field. 6 is the stadium, and then 7 was the middle school. Again, we can do those phases in whichever direction we would like. The idea is that when doing any of the phases, we take into consideration the other phases, so we don't do something that would jeopardize future development. All of it beyond phase 2 is just a plan. Is just, as I said to her at the meeting, it's a dream. We don't have funding for it. We haven't asked for funding, and we haven't really even had a conversation about how we would fund it. I said, it's right now, our number one job is to educate children, and we have to do everything we can to protect those operational funds we have. And waiting for the state to kind of settle down on their property tax and school funding conversations, as well as taking our forecast into account. But there are mechanisms and things we could do if we so choose to. But I bring that conversation forward just to kind of have a conversation with the board as to, what are you hearing? Are you hearing are you being asked about future phases? I think we as a board, I think unofficially, maybe just in a conversation talking about, maybe the next phase, we should really start taking a hard look at the middle school because it's our oldest facility now. At the same time, when we started this whole conversation, the committee that we brought together, there was not an appetite for a new middle school. One reason why was we just came off the elementary build. But then the other one, which was like the elephant in the room and no one wanted to speak about, was the only place to put it on campus was where the current board office sits, which then takes the building from Broadview Heights into Brecksville. And that's the conversation. And we really want to have a conversation about that. I don't blame them. I really don't want to have that conversation either. So the idea was to keep the middle school where it was, also because the PSO and district had just renovated the auditorium. And by all accounts, and Brian, correct me if I speak incorrectly here, many professionals believe that the middle school has solid bones. It's a good building. It just could use a retrofit, an upgrade, a remodel, whatever we want to talk about. So that's the campus master plan, just to refresh all of our memory. I guess I would just ask if any of you have had conversations with community members, or if you've heard of any conversations, or is it just kind of a pipe dream and we leave it out there?
I get the feeling that people are waiting,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because there's an awful lot of, there are many pieces to all of this. I think that people are excited about what it could be. Of course, we would put the kids' futures first, above and beyond anything else that we do, but I think that you've demonstrated that that's what we do. In fact, and so I just think they're waiting to see how it all evolves.
I've been at a lot now, I will say it's a concentrated population of graduates, families, but with younger students in the still in our schools at several grad parties since I just had a child graduate. And what I have gotten at several of them is not necessarily anything focused on the master plan. There's been some generalized comments around, I don't think we need new athletic facilities, things like that. No one has been speaking necessarily about the middle school. What I hear overall is a lot of anxiety, trepidation around, are we gonna need a levy? What are we gonna need a levy? There's so much media coverage right now around vouchers, the state budget, the state's lack of funding, the fair school funding plan for schools. What ultimately, I think people are waking up to the fact that BBH is going to be impacted by all of this, and what will that mean? So specifically about the master plan, no, the middle school, definitely not. I would just like to add, as having been in the middle school recently, and throughout the school year, it is a large building. Our enrollment can house the kids that we have, right, and can even grow. So I don't know, I just want to state that I do agree that it has good bones and can fit what we have and is already situated and already a piece of our. Can I say one other comment, because I am talking a lot here, but I hear everyone say, you know, well, what about, it's about learning. It's about, you know, we have to be concerned about our facilities. We have to be concerned about all our facilities. And I just want to state that, you know, Lisa and I are the extracurricular kind of liaisons for you, Jeff. And there is a lot of learning that goes on for our students that participate in extracurriculars and that participate on those fields. And to say extracurriculars are an extension of the classroom. And I would say that they bring an entirely different dynamic to the learning. And there's tons of research, and we could probably dig that up and talk about how well students perform in the classroom when they are involved with athletics and extra and co-curriculars. So I just want the community to kind of think about those things when they're saying, we don't need this, we don't need that. If you look at how well our students perform in the classroom, take a jump and look at how well they perform on the competition field.
You said that, and I crazy back
I
at
say the same
we're
thing.
sitting in graduation, and as Mr. Jacob does, he does a wonderful job recognizing all the different groups and everything else. But one of the last ones he said was, he asked anybody that was involved in an athletic activity to please stand. And if you're sitting in the crowd at graduation looking at that stage, you watch about 80% of our kids
Correct.
stand up. And I looked at him and go, that's why athletic facilities are important.
Yeah.
But I want to be clear, because I some people have taken some of my comments out of context. Our number one job is to educate children. And you're absolutely correct, Tish. It doesn't always happen in the classroom.
Correct.
So these facilities also educate our children. But we also need to think, just in today's day and age, and the way school funding and property tax conversation is going, we have to protect our base. And our base is what we do to educate kids in the classroom, the standards that were given by the state. I also don't believe our communities believe that that base is all that they want their children to be exposed to. So that's why we push this conversation and present it. But ultimately, it's our community's decision if they would want to do any of it.
Correct.
And this isn't what we're solely focused on. No, this just comes up in conversation because it's what a lot of people see. So, you know, and I think when we get done talking about the financial forecast and where we stand, we can talk about some hypotheticals that if we wanted to do pieces of this, what mechanisms or triggers are in place that would allow our community to choose to do some of these things or not. But you know, for the very least, when we go to repave a parking lot someday, we at least know that parking lot's gonna be there for the next 25 years. And that's what is important about the campus master plan. So I appreciate those comments. And it is, if you, graduations is just that reminder every year of the number of kids. And this isn't just athletics. The changes on campus also affect a lot of the arts as well.
Correct.
Marching band being the most obvious one. So yeah, it's just, again, we want to keep it at the forefront because we did make an investment to have this plan. And we are going to pick pieces of it off along the way. And if our community tells us at some point that they want to do a bigger swath of it, then we'll have that conversation, but just want to keep it fresh and from there. But I didn't mean to cut anybody else off.
I just need to make the point that it's designed and it is designed to impact learning at every phase and stage. I'm not saying we need to go full bore with any of it. There's a lot of conversation around that, but it's designed to be a campus that supports learning at with every facility, every stage.
And from Columbus, you have the concept of educating the whole child.
Right.
And this is a perfect example, just as Tish was mentioned, that we are talking about educating a whole child.
And it comes back to smart use of our resources too, right? Because you get to certain points with certain facilities that is it worth the 25, the 50, the $75,000 improvement or repair when you're at a point where you have to make those determinations. We're not there right now, but I think of bleachers in a stadium, right? They reach a useful life, and when it's time to redo a bleacher section, are we revisiting to think, okay, are we just gonna do bleachers to get by, or gonna do something else for some economies of scale? Well, Brad, I'm sorry.
No, I mean, for me, and having participated in this master planning process, I mean, to see the community come together and get a lot of different viewpoints on it. I think sometimes it gets glossed over. Some of the real positives that came out of this are that the high school stays where it is. As a community, as a school district, we decided that the high school building is going to stay online for a long time. That the middle school is going to stay online. I mean, there was a discussion about could it go someplace else? Could we build a new, what would it look
Yeah,
like?
we even talked about combining 6 through 12 in one building.
So there were a lot of those discussions that happened, and as a district, we've sort of looked and moved forward to say, hey, we're gonna keep this building we're in tonight online.
Right.
And so that really helps us make responsible investments in this building. We can say, okay, we're gonna look for grants, we're gonna work with our permanent improvement money to make improvements because this building is going to be serving our children and our community for decades to come. I think that's a real positive. And the same thing with the stadium. There was talk that it could have been moved someplace else, right? That stadium is now almost 40 years old. And it could have been moved out to Hilton. It could have been moved to, where the board office is. It could be moved someplace else. Like we've seen at some other communities around us when they're constructing new stadiums. And as a group, I think the community sort of came together and said, no, it should stay where it is. We think it has good bones. And so that allows us then to have the discussion about what improvements, like the bleachers,
Right.
what things that now that this is 40 years old, what things are missing or that are maybe that need repair or improvement, and how might we look to fund those? And I think that's being responsible with limited dollars to make sure that we're moving our campus forward. So that to me is a real powerful piece of this. I agree that, and I've heard some feedback that overall that it's a really big plan. If you look at all the different phases. Getting specifically, and I have heard some feedback about the athletics versus academics or the building piece. I think we can be pretty proud of the job that we've done as a district maintaining the middle school facilities. That it's in the state of condition it is today, that it does not need millions and millions and millions of renovation because our permanent improvement levies and the projects that we've done have kept this building at a good standard. Yes, there are things that could be improved. Yes, there are opportunities that if we're gonna keep this building online, I think we should be discussing. But I think this building, for as old as it is in really, really good condition. And that's a testament, I think, to our district being very responsible with that permanent improvement money to make sure it's being spent to keep this building online. So those things were really important to me. I think overall, it's a big plan. There's some big dollar numbers. There's not
Yeah.
dedicated funding ideas. Personally, I'd like to see it sort of, some of the numbers teased out a little bit more. I mean, I know the consultants that kind of put it together had some ballpark numbers. But as we started looking more at a menu of things to kind of see what those prices might actually look like and what some of those components are, again, maybe blending some of the different things together, as things go forward. But overall, I think this sets us in a good direction.
Mhm.
Not sure that it's any of the big stuff that's gonna happen all at once, but I think for a direction for our campus and our community and our district, it's a real positive document and process to have gone through.
And those numbers that we were presented with, those are architectural estimates with little detail in it, right? You know, when it says $8 to $9 million for baseball softball complex, that's full turf fields on both. You know, so there's definitely pieces that would be teased out a little bit further, but same time, that costs money to do those, so we won't really get into those until we really start having a conversation of wanting to move forward with some type of funding idea. Then we would tease some of those costs out, because as we know, as each day goes by, each month goes by, and year, it's more expensive. But you know, at this point, we at least have an architectural estimate that gives a ballpark.
Yeah, my sense is that I think the community has, for the most part, taken root of what we've said, which this is visionary, right? So they also don't see, well, now we're coming at you with a bond issue or with, you know, funding options and whatnot. It's like, okay, this is, it's master campus planning, and it's so that, you know, if we do something today, we're not undoing it tomorrow. And, you know, all of these phases can be done piecemeal. And, you know, it's a structure that we can plan from and figure out when do we want to do some of these things? How do we want to do some of these things? And to your point, we're going to talk about it in a little bit, you know, we have to protect our operational base. And so, you know, since we're getting close to that time to be on ballot for operating money, you know, I'm doing something larger like this on a PI standpoint probably doesn't look like it's a good idea on the front burner, maybe more on the back burner.
Right. It's hard to get excited about.
Yeah.
You know, because of just the focus and what we have to do. I will say though, because I want to make sure I represent those voices, when I'm at athletic events and I'm around people who may be a little more biased. Okay, that there's a strong desire to wanting to do something. And the things I hear are, you know, our facilities aren't on par with similar school districts. We don't have enough facilities. That's the hidden one that a lot of community members don't realize, that we don't have enough facilities to house all of the athletic teams that we have, including middle school. And we're even having conversations right now. As a district, we're a little later than everybody else, but girls flag football is on the scene and it's coming. We had a parent come in and meet with Mark Mazzalona 2 weeks ago of a 5th grade daughter who they're participating in flag football through CYO, and just the girls are having a ton of success. Nordonia, our neighbor to the east, just won the first ever girls state championship for flag football, spring sport. And, you know, like many clubs do, well, we'll play wherever you give us, you know, on the grass, whole stadium, wherever. But then once you start it, they want to be on the turf like everybody else. I can't blame them, but then that only makes like Sundays available. So those are the struggles internally that we have that are not insurmountable. We can deal with it. As someone once said too, our facilities are playable. I'm not going to tell you they're not playable. I'm not going to tell you they're not safe. They're just at times, in some views, an unbiased view, they're adequate. So obviously that. So
I get the only thing I'll say is exactly the point you made is I don't think people realize how much our stadium is used now. And like, I'd love to see Mr. Mazzona's schedule of how that space is used, because it's jam packed with everything that's happening there. And I mean, I've had people question, why are we even paying to redo the turf? Like that's a huge expense. Like, because literally every child in our district uses that space for gym class, for activities for middle school and high school, for marching band, I mean, it's a really extreme, we have, we have homecoming there, you know, like, it's used a lot. And to have another field that's soccer and lacrosse just takes some of the pressure off of that space, so there's extra spaces. And I've heard the same comments that the community member that, you know, that we should move and basically do like phase 3 and 4 as like a safety and middle school update. So I have heard that too, but you know, the same thing when I hear from athletic parents who are really involved and understand our sports and understand the facilities we have, that our facilities aren't adequate and they would really love to do something. So I think it just depends on who you're talking to and what their level of knowledge and education is. So, I mean, I guess that's on us as a board and as a district to just make sure we're constantly educating people to let them know, like, yes, we can play on these fields, we could do all this, but I don't know if you realize like just how much is happening here and, you know.
I'd have to show you Mr. Manzalona's text messages because it is at such demand that it's not like, well, let me sign up and use it on this day. It's like anytime somebody has a schedule change or there's a rain event or something, it's like moving chess pieces to get everybody out there, which is a great thing. Like today, Pickett was out there. You know, there's stuff going on that field pretty much every day of the week, which is great. That's what it should be used for. That's why we have it. It's a community asset. And so all good there. Well, good. I appreciate the conversation. As Lisa said, this is part of helping educate our community. Yes, we have a plan. It's there. Doesn't mean we're going to necessarily do it. We're ready to do it if and when the time and financial resources present themselves. So speaking of financial resources, this is where I'll tag my friend in here to go over a little financial review and maybe what the future looks like financially for BBH. We kept saying this is coming for us.
I know. You know, I kind of threw this together, but it's really, so there's not a ton, but I think it kind of visualizes, and then we'll go over a couple of examples. Just to show where things are of like February versus June. So I did not make a lot of updates. Because most of the stuff is trending pretty well overall. And this is kind of showing the tale of two forecasts, which is really going to highlight the level or the need for when we talk about, you know, new money. When we look at the current legislation that has affected us right now, we only have one item that's affected us, which is House Bill 355. Or is it 335, I think, sorry. Which caps inside millage. And so when we have our next reappraisal, which was kicked out due to their shifting of the counties throughout Ohio, I think we're up in 2030 or 2031 will be that next reappraisal piece of it. We will be capped out on the inside millage if it goes above the GDP deflator of inflation. So that will have an impact on us at some point, as long as if we would trend another cycle that would be high assessed valuations. And I say that because when we went through this, and I mean, we did not see a large influx of money for the size of our budget, but approximately $1 million was increased over the entire both residential and commercial real estate from that reappraisal inside millage. So that does help extend your levy cycle naturally, right? Because it's still $1 million. Because as we all know, with the way that the property tax structure is in Ohio, is that we don't have increases in revenue at the same rates that correspond with the expenditure side, which is why we run into these cycles that we talked about, which is the levy cycle. So this will kind of demonstrate a little bit, it's a short presentation in terms of, I think ultimately the recommendation is, and we'll show you 3 examples. One, if we do nothing. One, if we go out in 27. One, if we go out in 28, which we'll look at. The recommendation is to be looking at a spring levy for 2027 or a collection in 2028. And that what we've modeled, and I can do other examples as well if necessary, is to kind of stay along the lines of a 5.9 mil levy, keeping under 6. Which would do that. This is kind of the easiest way to look at this. So the red line is basically if we do nothing, and that's our cash balance. We would be, by 2030, we would be completely underwater in the hole with no cash balance. If we would do the proposed levy, we would go slightly upward trajectory. Again, remember, we have that $6 million transfer planned in 28, which is what kind of it starts to go up because of that. Then you would have the collections coming in as well. But by 2030, we would actually already start deficit spending again, potentially. In 2031, it would continue. But this is what's happening right now to expenditures overall. And again, I'll show you the forecast, but this is the trend of what we're seeing with the expenditure side of this. And of course, the revenue side is not keeping pace with it, which is what causes the large deficits unless we act to do something. And then that's why this planning would be critical. What happens is that we would get a half of a year collection in 2028, which would be January through June of 2028 for fiscal 28. And then, which would be about $4.9 million. And then the full impact of a 5.9 mil levy would generate about $9.5 million a year, which would be seen in the forecast from 29 and 30. So it would keep us at a cash balance of $23.3 million in fiscal 30. And we would be starting to decline at that point already. Keep in mind too, that as expenses go up, days cash is also affected by all of that, right? So this still keeps us above the 90-day balance threshold, which again, I will show in a few minutes. But if we don't, we actually go below our board policy of 90 days and we would stay under 90 days if we don't act or something changes between now and then. So happy to entertain any questions, but I will also pull up some other working documents of the where they at? Okay, so this is like the summary effect of no. You can kind of see it in more plain text of download this actually so that I can open these up differently. So that's the summary effect. So it's the shortened version of this. So total revenues are on this top line, and then we look at total expenditures that are below. So you can see this number here is inflated because of the $6 million transfer. We would get rid of whatever's left where we have the campus master plan currently sitting. But you can see that the revenues drop back down at basically $58 million. So we're sitting at this level where your expenditures are increasing far faster. And these are not assuming, as we go through contract negotiations in the spring, these are not assuming any types of large increases whatsoever. The biggest driver in terms of what we've planned for is not, and it's still somewhat, it's not really even that conservative. It's with benefits right now, and benefits in SHC is stabilizing, which is good, but we're still not out of the woods of like double-digit increases. So I still think we'll be maybe at a 10% this year. Last year we were at 12, the year before it was 13.6. Healthcare in general is just out of control, and we're seeing this with other consortiums as well. So that is the biggest growing line item right now is on the benefit side.
And I think that's an important aspect to all this conversation in whole. We're talking about our expenditures being as is, meaning not reducing pay to participate, not reducing school fees, not those things that we hear sometimes from community members. In our forecast here, we're talking about, yes, our increases in, that we're forecasting in benefits and salary and purchase services and just goods and services in general, inflationary type of things. This is not the addition of free all-day kindergarten, and things of that nature. So I just have to throw that layman's little aspect into this, that this is just kind of status quo.
And this assumes no legislative changes.
This still assumes no legislative changes as well, correct?
I mean, and so that is a factor that could be in play at some point at any given time too.
And it would probably not be to the benefit of public schools. These additional legislative issues. I wonder what the rationale is with the for capping at 5.95.
5.9.
Okay, 5.9. Only because we'll be selling that amount to the public, but in the same breath saying that it will only keep us in good stead for the next 2 years, and then we begin to go down again.
Potentially.
And what that would tell me as a community member is you're going to come back again for more money, potentially. And that's not necessarily the best news.
No,
I mean, I have no answer for that, but that kind of sounds like in black and white, that's what we're trying to do.
it's correct. And I think that it's important to note that we probably extended this levy cycle much longer due to some of that ESSER funding that we received.
Right.
In terms of how we spent our money, in terms of how we've restructured some of our permanent improvement spending. And there's strategies in place that could be in place if needed to defer some of that. But at the same time, most people are looking at levies between every 5 to 7 years. We're
Right.
ultimately going to get 10 years out of it. Things could also change. I think we've got to obviously monitor staffing and benefits are our two top items as 87% of the budget. So we've got to just maintain our diligence as we navigate our enrollment changes and all of those things that come out. So
And you have an
those are all an important
election,
piece of this.
you'll have an election in 28, which may
Correct.
make things look different.
Right. And I think that's important to note too, that we've stretched it to the point that we have through building consolidations. You know, as painful as that was, you know, consolidating has helped us with economies of scale. And then the past 3 years, we've had 45 upwards, this is an exact number, but 45 retirements. Going from the bottom right of that pay scale, getting replaced with upper left. Which has helped us stretch and stay out of deficit spending as long as possible. But the rate of inflation on just goods and services, but then the healthcare piece is really hammering us. Not just us alone,
Oh, yeah.
it's everybody across the board, so, and. You know, we don't like it, but this is the only way we get to fund schools.
And,
But you're right, to see that in 2 to 3 years, we're gonna be deficit spending after a new levy.
and
That's
it's
not
not
what
for
we're used to.
irresponsible stewardship of people's tax,
Correct.
you know, and that's what we have to make sure.
Yeah, I would challenge anyone to put Craig and I on the spot to prove that we are being prudent with the resources that we're given, that they are being spent appropriately. You know, we would talk about the things that we participate in as a district to help save us money. Because there's plenty of that to share.
I guess I want to be cautious with it, you know, if we were to go to the community with a 5.9 mil levy. On this timeline and it passes, we talk about, you know, within a couple of years, it could be deficit spending again. How badly, I guess, is the question, right? Because you could be sitting on 25 million in cash and you could be deficit spending $200,000, right? And the
Right.
question is, does it fall off a cliff?
Right.
Or are you deficit spending 200,000, 500,000, a million, which, you know, when you're sitting at $25 million cash balance, all of a sudden, it's a slower, you know, is it a slower decline? You know, because people hear, you know, deficit spending is not, you know, nobody likes to hear deficit spending, but the cyclical nature of these levies where you build up a cash balance and then you start to spend it down. You know, the important thing is not that you're starting to deficit spend, but it's how fast and when are you gonna get to the point where you're gonna run out? So while you might start deficit spending in 2 or 3 years, that alone doesn't necessarily trigger sirens. It's, do we need to be back on the ballot, you know,
It's the rate.
4 or 5 years after we just got money? The question is, how long can we extend that? And I guess that, you know, that's a big part of it. And then the other thing, which is important to talk about, because people always ask, well, when is our enrollment shrinking, right? And even if enrollment is shrinking, you know, your staffing does not shrink in alliance, you know, in this, at the same level that enrollment might shrink. But can you just talk a little bit about our enrollment?
Yeah.
Our projection and what we're seeing with enrollment?
Yeah, you know, we are seeing, in the time I've been here, which is only 3 years, extremely steady enrollment. But we have seen fluctuations in grade levels, though, that have hit us. I believe, and with the forecasting that we have so far, our last 300 student class just graduated. You know, at this rate and where we stand with our head count each grade level, we will not have another 300 graduate core class. But for example, last year's kindergarten class was 235. The one before that was 235, but the one coming in this coming year is already at 256. But if we went back to the enrollment studies that were done, numerous of them, it projected a little bump for this coming year. And that's a little bump, that's doable. That elementary building, for example, when we're between 250 and 260, the elementary building is perfect size. It's when we get to that 280, 290, it's like we're squeezing it. So we've stayed steady with our student enrollment, even with all the voucher stuff happening and school choice happening. Our district is a district of choice.
Yeah, so I mean, total enrollment,
3,600.
37,
Yep.
36, right? And
Yep.
so, what is it over the last, 4 or 5 years, right? I think we were losing, under 10%.
Mhm.
For a number of years, and that was some of the projection was gonna stabilize, but it's just a very small, either flat or just a little bit down. Is that still the
Yeah,
trend line?
it is the trend line, according to those studies that we had done.
And I think if you extrapolate, what was I just do 250. If we would ever get to a true like 260, I even did 260 times 13 grade levels, you'd be at 33, almost 3,400. So
Okay,
even if we stabilize at 250 to 260, we should be between 33 and 3,400. Is what that would come out to.
But even then,
Not all of them are that way. We
Right.
also do get some kids that join us in the high school levels from the.
I know there's
stuff.
choppiness.
yeah. And we will show a pattern of behavior as a district of, I'll even say kindergarten. When we went into staffing this year, kindergarten, we were reducing a position. Because we had been at 235, and we were on that verge this past year, and we held on to a staff member, which the staff members and families like having 20 or 19 in a class. But we were reducing a kindergarten teacher, thinking we're gonna be around the 230, 240 number, and it would be 21 to 22 a class. Okay, well, then we get 256, so we brought that position back. So every year of staffing, even when that bubble class goes to our elementary, we're moving teachers to service those students and then reducing the grade levels that are lower. So I would tell you that our behavior and our past practice is every year, we're constantly taking a look at that staffing number to make sure we fall in line. But here comes the conversation with our community, right? Or when we talk to our elementary parents, they want to go back to the days of 17, 16 in classrooms. And we as a district, as you've heard me say numerous times on the record, I will continue to say it, K-1-2, if I'm at 23 or less, I get zero heartburn at all. If I get over 23 in K-1-2, I start to worry a little bit. But then grades, 3, 4, 5, I hate to say this number out loud, but it's 27. And if I'm over 27, I'm sweating bullets, and that's not good. But also, when we're trying to balance the academic portion with the financial responsibility, we have to do it. And smaller class size does not always equate to better academic achievement or outcome. So, and now I know there's an argument for the employee side of that. I get that. But we have to make decisions that are in the best interest of both our student and staff and our community. So we have that conversation all the time. Even if Craig wasn't forcing the conversation, we're still having it. But every treasurer would force that conversation.
Most, right?
Most.
So this is, I'm gonna go right to the other case scenario, which is actually if we waited a year. So this kind of shows what our cash balance would be if we waited a year.
Meaning spring of 28.
Meaning spring of 28, which would be our collection of 29, January 29. And so you see, we would be finishing this year at 13.7, we would drop to 16 million, we would stay at 16 million because that $6 million transfer. And then we would be bringing in that $5 million extra from the levy in 29. We would, despite that, drop another $3 million because our deficit here is at $7.6 million. And then 9.5 million the following year puts us at a cash balance down here, but we're collecting the other half of that. So we're almost kind of like breaking even that year before you start to deficit spend. So this kind of keeps us I'm not having massive heart palpitations at 13 million for this district, but we're getting to that point where and we're definitely below the days of cash that our board policy would dictate at $13 million at this point. So the sweet spot happens to be spring of 27, which I'll show you here. These numbers are still all the same at the top, and then we start to bring in this 5 million here. We are increasing here. We get up all the way up to $23 million after we do the transfer in 28. to 29, we go to $23 million, and we're about equal here as well, because again, it's the same amount that's coming in that at that time. And then from here, you would potentially deficit spend. We're gonna try to curb as much as we can. So I think still you're looking at, I mean, to your point, Mark, I think that our goal will always be to make the deficit as small as it is, or as small as it can be, so that you can still continue to extend. And then we'd be looking at probably 6 to 7 years, probably before you'd be asking for money. At the earliest, I would hope that we can maintain that. If you can get some extensions, or you can get some other ways to curb some of those expenses, I think you can maybe push it to the 8 years. We could get there, but that'll all depend on other factors that are in play right now. I mean, right now, inflation is still really high. And it keeps causing issues for supplies and purchase services. Purchase services are what's struggling.
Well, and I think that, that's something important to highlight, which is, let's say we go to the community is supportive, we get the 5.9, right? We have all these variables, inflation, healthcare costs, state legislature, all these things, but we do have control over some of the costs. We can control some of the costs, and we can also make choices if we're like, oh my gosh, it's looking like that last levy may only last 6 years. We really need to get 7 or 8 out of it. We could also say, well, let's start reducing expenditures. It means cutting staff. I mean, that's the reality of it. And so, but I mean, so we can, kind of put our thumb on the scale and say, well, wait a minute, it's not going to be good to go back to the community too soon. So let's not just spend it down and then say, well, we're out of money, time to go back to the community and say, we need more money. We can also say, well, let's try to make some adjustments earlier to try to extend out that cycle.
Well, and one of the things, Mike, you're saying, but we've had these conversations, was we're starting to see some communities ask for like opt-in transportation. Some high profile districts too, right? Because transportation is one of our largest expenses and a growing line item. It's not saying that we're not cutting high school busing,
Right.
but it's more of this opt-in type of process. And we're starting to see more communities go to it, where we started to like, should we do this? Should we not do this? Like, these are conversations we're having because A, we can't find bus drivers, so that's a problem. B, it's like the race to the top. So people are like, one of our colleagues just north of here was like, why do you pay your bus drivers so much? I'm like, well, I don't know. We need to recruit them too. So that's another area that's a real high expense item of conversations that we've had without making a decision right now. But those are things that can help defer some of those costs if we needed to do so as well.
It's nice to have that conversation right now, because we're not having a conversation of, okay, what are we gonna cut when it doesn't pass, right?
Right.
But we have to talk about these things. And one of the things that I would point out is, there's a lot of things that we do in our district that is of past practice, expectation, that is not the expectation in all districts around us. Hence the reason we have the academic achievement that we have. And I don't even want to mention any positions because I don't want somebody to run with that narrative. But the point being is there are things in our district that I think our parents and community just expect, that's our standard. Well, when the time comes that we need to curtail to stretch another 2-3 years, some of those expectations or what they believe were essential items are not essential in the grand scheme of things when you're talking about making payroll, for example. And we're watching many well-run districts in the area talking about reductions, and similar size school district to us to the south in Summit County was just on the news last week because they have to produce their financial plan of reducing 37 certified positions in a district similar to us in a suburban district. And it's like, I sit there and think, wow, like 37 positions after you not replace some retirees. So, watching some other districts go through that really brings it home. And I think we haven't had to be at that level of conversation, but it's just a rude reminder, and it's always emotional, right? Because in our business, when we're talking about reductions, yeah, we can reduce some mileage on buses or some routes or eliminate routes, but really to balance budget, you're talking about people. It's just the nature of the business.
Have you been following the news in Cleveland.com about the movement to? I'm not really sure I even understood the process of sharing bus routes with other districts. I mean, making it more of a county-wide
Consortium.
service and consortium rather than individual districts plus.
So
offerings.
we watch this stuff all the time and I can appreciate the conversations that are happening. And we do a lot of consolidated purchasing and things like that through a lot of the consortiums that we're part of, just like healthcare, for example. But when you start talking that, that's when districts then begin to lose their identity and the reason people move to our community as well. So that's when I get back to, okay, what's the expectation of our community versus what could it really get to?
Well, and this
and-
is a state-driven.
And this is a state
initiative
work group,
as a result of
private
the
transportation.
voucher-driven privatization, because all of a sudden they realize, yeah, they've got the private school entree, however, they can't get there.
Right. Right, and there's no guarantee, as I was reminded this week when I met with our group at the ESC with our advocates who lobby for public schools. If it was unconstitutional, then choice would go away. That's not a guarantee that $1.5 billion is coming to public schools.
Yeah.
We all know that though, and I'm okay saying that's okay, it's still fine, but yeah, so the vouchers, you're seeing it now in the news too. You take the dough, you gotta show, the catchphrase that's coming out with some of the new bills. There's new bills that have been passed. They're getting ready to break for summer, so hopefully we won't see a lot. But as we have seen the past couple cycles, this bill here at the end, they're gonna be piling stuff in.
And you've got the midterms.
Yep.
So I think a lot of people are waiting, holding their breaths to see what the,
But the
Results of the
primary,
midterm.
there were some very powerful individuals who lost their positions in the primary
yes,
that I think will be pushing very hard
yes.
between now and November to make some things come to fruition. So we have to watch the bill this summer.
And our levy effort would be right in between.
Yep.
So you've got the midterms and you've got the general election.
Right.
And both of those, I think, are gonna be huge.
Which
And
could
the
also
expectation is
impact
that
the
it's gonna be
forecast.
huge. Yeah, exactly.
And speaking of that part of it, I guess I will, at the top here for the revenue cycle, you'll see the state share funding. This, we believe, you'll see it like it goes up from this year, 5.3 to 5.6, but we kind of bring it down just a smidge. Without knowing what those bienniums are, I kind of like split the baby of kind of like figuring out where this goes in between, because you just don't know what's happening. And again, some of this can all change depending on who becomes governor, how the state legislature looks, whether there's veto power or not veto power. There's a lot of variables that could happen in the state funding model. As we know, they've not updated the base inputs. So if you can even just get base inputs to 23 or 24,
Right,
this could help.
Yeah.
So a little bit conservative in 28, 29, 30 on the state side. It's not, don't see much of a change here. The unrestricted stuff stays pretty consistent. And then everything else is kind of, status quo, on the revenue side. Again, you'll see here on the expenditure side, this is factoring in right now with the 5.9 as scheduled. You will see that salaries are growing, almost $1 million a year. Those are the column increases, the step increases, those are the base increases, all factored in there. Large growing item is here with our retirement insurance benefits, and then purchase services, kind of modest, but we're hoping, like, this is an area that just continues to grow at the fastest pace. You'll see that, like, the supplies, and I was just saying this, I don't know if this was today or last week, it's our supplies line is really not, like, you're not saving anything in the supplies line. We actually spend very little on supplies, I think, to some of our peer districts. So this is what all of this stuff looks like. And then down here, I'll highlight the True Days cash. If we do nothing, it's this top line. So this is off of a different line item. This 122 is where we should finish this year. Before the encumbered balances or whatever. And then we would go down to actually being, broke, -4 days if we don't do anything. With that levy, we kind of just hover in this 100 to 120 days type of range. With the 5.9 mil levy that happens right here in 28. You'll see that first half come in.
What's your healthcare cost assumption? Those numbers, 10%.
So the 27 is 10%. And then I think it's 888, or it's 10, 10, 88. No, I'm not sure for 28. I can look though. So years ago, we used to kind of forecast 8 and we were getting like 4s, which is great. Because that's where you can like, I kind of said this at the coffee chat, is that a lot of times that's where we would kind of hold our little buffer a little bit, which was like, we kind of hope between a 4 and a 6, we kind of forecast an 8 or a 9. And nowadays, right now, it's like, we're pretty tight, I think, in those areas. The part I was just talking today with the consultant at K-12 was that I do think that our staff, as we talked about, so many of them have moved to that other plan that we offer, which actually helped us, because when we actually are comparing this year versus last year, even though we took a 12% increase on our plan, the actual cost impact to us from employee benefit or from healthcare is actually coming in at about 8.9%. And I think that that is because so many have moved from the traditional plan to the less rich plan on their own, which is a free premium to them, but it's saving the district money by moving to that plan. So that is like how, when you blend that together, it's actually our impact is less by offering that plan to more people.
When we're talking about, you know, as we go into negotiations next year too, continuing to educate our staff on benefits, who pays for benefits, what they cost, and then what are some of the new trends and options out there, high deductibles, health savings accounts, things of that nature that we're seeing some other partner districts begin to implement.
Yeah, we've seen there's 4 districts in our consortium that some of them are offering an HSA option, which is saving the district and a lot of money. Depending on how they fund it, there's different models of how they're funding it, and some are requiring it. I think there's 2 right now that are going to do a full, that is their only health plan that they'll have is an HSA. It's fully funded HSA, but it is their only option that they have, which is a drastic shift.
That is.
No, offhand.
I don't offhand, but there's 2. One's going to it, I think, actually.
Well, the other piece of this too, and the extension of getting kind of 10 years out of the last levy is, you know, so some of the difficult changes that were made on salary schedules, where the old salary schedule sunsetted, and then we have retirements, and then the newer staff coming on the newer salary schedules really eases some of the cost curve there. So, but it's still significant,
Right.
you know.
It is. And
You know,
we're
it
trying,
helps, but it's still significant. That, and you throw the healthcare costs on there going up at 10%, that's just really hard. When, you know, when you go back to the community, and they those that plug in enough can understand, like our operating levies, you know, we don't get more money when when the house value goes up, you know. It's like, it's hard to wrap your head around, but it's like, you know, you don't. Meanwhile, you know, our operating costs are just like everybody else's, you know, people need raises, health insurance goes up, inflation, all this other stuff. So that just is gonna keep going up, and eventually we're gonna run out of money, and we have to go back for more operating money. I mean, it's just.
Well, it shows
that we're in.
it shows right here, our average annual revenue growth is 0.12%.
Yeah.
And then you go down and we're sitting at 3.2%,
Yeah.
which isn't terrible, right? When you look at total expenditures, that's technically right now less than the rate of inflation, which does kind of account for the fact that we're trying to do what we can to keep our expenditures in line the best we can. And that's been a trend in general by keeping those expenses at that level.
And I think I have to say it, our people throughout the district, our employees are helping keep that at 3.26. And it's not always fun. And it's not always great conversations to have when we're having budgeting conversations, but they're doing their part as well. I don't want to discount that. But it's just how long can we continue that trend? You know, when I see diesel hitting $6 a gallon, thinking, we have all diesel buses.
I was gonna ask, you know,
Yeah.
have you seen a quantified increase in costs with fuel? I mean, I assume.
But we haven't yet. I think next year we will. We were right on
contract
target.
by-
Yeah, because we do a consortium contract pricing with it. They're actually one of the reasons why we get that nice rebate. I kind of shared with you guys from
Yeah.
Repay last week, is that they actually take a V card. So we're actually getting a nice rebate from the fact that our fuel provider takes a V card. But this year so far, we haven't seen that, but I believe next year will probably be a bigger impact because of how their buying power is impacted. And we do apply for, like, we do get, like tax refunds from the fuel consumption as well, which we apply for to get those, that money's back as well.
One other question as we're talking about potential levy, which is gonna, at some point, juice the cash balance a little bit. Is there any concern the legislature may spin up their, carryover restriction that they took, that they were playing around with last time, that when we might be in violation of that?
Well, so I think as the expenditures grow, I don't think we'll find ourselves nearly in that situation based on this. However, I believe that monitoring it probably would make sense, just because we've got some buckets now to play with that we need to, because first of all, if we hear from that, we can easily pivot and move that $6 million to 29.
Right.
If we start hearing those talks again, we have the ability to do that. We still have the severance fund as well, which we, keep. It's technically under what we're allowed to keep in there, because you're only supposed to put in there what you potentially would expend within 5 years.
Okay.
So we have a couple different mechanisms we can use to kind of keep under that would still allow us to move it in the future if we needed to.
Okay.
So overall, though, for this year, there's not a ton of adjustments from what you see every month, as we kind of close out. We just closed May today. So we just have 1 month left, a couple more weeks left of this fiscal year, and things are running at least on track. The rest of it, who knows, I guess, right? We try to do the best we can with forecasting, but not knowing as much as there is out there for the next couple bienniums. And again, who your next governor and state legislature, how that looks, we get a better picture in the fall, hopefully, which will be after the next forecast in August. So that'll, not help us as much either, but we'll kind of stay in tune to it.
So the earlier scenario of going out for a new levy earlier, would that be is it a May?
In May, so we
May
would have,
cycle.
yeah, so we'd be looking at doing resolutions before February, so you're looking at December, January, your latest times because you can do it ahead of time technically, so you don't miss any deadlines. Then you'd be looking at getting the authorizations, December, January, because I think the deadline is like February 5th, so all of that has to be determined by this fall.
I know Craig mentioned it once, but I just clearly stated that, Craig and I, our conversations, our recommendation at this point would be spring of 27.
Yeah, because 28, I think 28, you would be looking, you're looking at more like a 7 or an 8 mil levy at that point.
So I guess the question for the board is, what else do we need to see? What are our next steps? This is our first substantive conversation for something concrete about, okay, timing wise, it's looking like spring of 27 makes the most sense, and that's at a 5.9.
Which is less than a year away.
Yes.
And we did get some information from Jim today as well, in terms of, I think we've typically utilized the spring timeframe. It's been advantageous in 17 and 18. Just because you can concentrate those efforts and have a smaller electorate to really focus some of those campaign dollars on, because these are expensive, and that's part of what people have been talking about with, you want to get rid of continuing levies, and there's expense to that, there's time, there's resources to all of that. We have to really, it's been 10 years, you have to mobilize an entire group of people to get a levy chair. Our jobs are extremely limited. You guys have no limits, by the way, which is great. Because they basically said board members can do whatever they'd like. But we have very limited abilities as treasurer and superintendent in the new levy site, the new levy environment to even help.
It'll be what we're doing now,
Yeah.
right? And that's why we continue to invest our time and energy in some of these communication efforts, so that there are established channels that we have with our community that will just continue. Unfortunately, I don't think it's unfortunate. I don't think it's either, but that's part of our job now. It's just that education to our community. We can't just assume that our stakeholders are going to understand all this. We have to be the educators to push that.
Would it be of any value? There's an organization called Support Ohio Schools, the Levy Institute. They're having Levy Institute training on June the 23rd via Zoom from 9 to 12.
I think we have some outstanding resources locally, as well as past practices that our district has leaned on, that I think will be beneficial.
I'm gonna listen to it.
Oh, yeah, they're good. We've
You know,
heard them
like it-
before.
Cause you never.
Yeah,
know.
their services down the road aren't free,
Oh, right.
Mhm.
Of course. Is
but
that,
yes,
okay,
they are a good organization, reputable organization.
okay,
Yeah.
all right. I'll see what.
Yeah, I mean,
what they
obviously
say.
leveraging Jim was great last time. I mean, he has a lot of political understanding
Mhm,
to help.
for sure.
So, and I don't wanna jinx it by saying this, but if we did May of 2027 and then it didn't go through, is November the next time, then May again, is it May, November, May, that's the only option?
Did they get rid of the August?
They did, yeah.
Okay,
And you get to next November, there's a lot on the ballot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh my
Both
God,
cities.
yes.
yeah. That's what they're trying, we try to avoid it, but yes, and then at the same time, if you go past. If you would go past November of 27, then we're talking about increasing the millage for 28,
Catch
because
up.
then you wouldn't collect. Until
What-
later.
and I mean, as far as like other communities, I mean, I've seen other communities, they have, I mean, how many times are people putting levies on the ballot? I know we're in a unique space and I hope people will support us, but I mean, in other districts, like, are they going like 2, 3, 4 plus times?
Different times.
Yeah,
Changing strategy, going from property tax to income tax.
right.
So there's been a lot. As we saw this past May, the vast majority, I think all but one, and at least in our area, was income tax. So
Yeah.
I think it depends on the community for sure. I mean, some of those, they're also going out frequently, or they're doing that renewal cycle, because there's been some that the renewals have failed. Which really, puts those districts at a disadvantage, because then all of a sudden they're losing money that they've already had, so. I mean, that's been the whole a large part of the strategic plan for us has been making sure that we're hitting all of these avenues, right? Of like, how are we communicating and engaging with people to have these conversations? And even though we get some frequent flyers at coffee chats, we, every time we get some new people that, come in and ask questions, like this last one was asking the question about, well, I think he almost fell out of his chair, an older gentleman who was like, how could it cost $17,000 to educate a kid? Doesn't cost that for a normal kid, it doesn't, but that's what the average is because of,
cost more.
other students it costs more, and we have the examples of that, that we do. And so I think that's enlightening to people of what we have to provide, and you start talking to some community members about what we have to provide in terms of transportation for, a lot of the parochial schools. Those are resources, whether you like it or you don't, that all gets kind of factored into this number that we get kind of painted with a broad brush of this is what it costs for you to educate, the kids. So I think all
And
the
we've
channels that
always
we've done.
provided that, yeah.
I mean, it's helpful at least because we are touching point with a lot of other community members, so.
Will we be able to see, I don't know, what you guys put together, like, we put 5.9, like, what is the
Oh, yeah.
average cost to?
Yep.
Okay,
There you go. We have all of that.
Do you
break
know-
it down
what it is now?
by month, by whatever. Yeah, if you keep talking a minute, I'll double check.
I can see, going forward when we have more discussions on this topic, it might be helpful to put together some slides that are a little more targeted, like some of what the numbers you showed up there is great, right? But it's all the line items, so there's a lot of numbers up there. Like if you boil it down on the one slide that says, revenues, expenses, cash balance, days cash, right? Those are like the big four, and you put them down like, here's if we do nothing. Here's if we do a 5.9 mil levy spring of 27. And here's if we push it to 28, right? And take it out for however long it makes sense, right? Just so that you could see in very concise terms, like here's the cliff. Here's one alternative, here's another alternative. And it's just easier to digest.
And make sure it's not a surprise, right?
Right.
And that's why we're talking about it now. That's why we've been talking about it in every coffee chat for the past 2 years. community, different community functions is we don't want this to be a surprise. There's enough conversation going on in districts around us that I'm sure some people are probably like, why isn't Principal Road Heights on the ballot? Or why aren't they talking about it? And I think we talked about the reasons for that, the continuing levies, the difficult decisions that have been made over the past 8 years, probably, that have kept us out of that fray, as I kept saying. But we're gonna enter that territory, so.
So roughly, and these are not exact numbers, but $500,000 auditor appraised value would be about $1,000 per year. Or $86 per month. Estimate, rough estimate. At a 5.9. We would provide certain examples of that as well, because normally in communities like this, you're probably looking at maybe. They did in the past, to be honest, but probably 300,000, 500,000, 7, maybe 800,000.
Sorry, do you know our average auditor appraised value in this?
I do not, I do not.
It was.
I mean, I think, I mean, there are probably houses, I'm sure, that are below 300,000, but there's probably not as many, I think, for our communities, it's probably closer. We would still, normally you include a baseline of 100 or 200,000 anyways. Just as your baseline, because some people can correlate that 100,000 to whatever that is per 100,000. But it's nice to give other examples of what is maybe more closer to what their house is worth. So, and it's all that terminology is important because it's what the appraised value from the auditor says, not what you can sell your house for.
Right.
Because sometimes you can sell your house for 700,000, but the auditor says it's
worth
600 or 400,000, whatever it is. Like they go.
And then you challenge it and say, no, it's 700.
Right, so it's not what you can sell it for, sometimes you like what the auditor's value is because it's less, and that's what you're actually taxed on, so.
So
yeah,
maybe what we look at doing too is, you know, I talked about maybe a more simple slide, but maybe it's a slide deck that has some kind of start building out a framework of what are the salient points, right? There's those cash expenses, revenues, that thing, and kind of showing they're staking 5.9, simple math, like if, you know, valuation for every 100,000 or 500,000, you know, $86 a day, whatever a month, whatever makes sense. Maybe there's some you know, frequently asked question type things, you know, like the campus master plan is not part of this, that's a visionary thing or what have you, and just starting to build out like what can we use to educate all of us and the community going forward. And, you know, maybe that's a living, breathing slide deck that grows and changes based on feedback we're getting so that we can start getting people more in tune with what's coming.
Yeah, at the senior center, we printed up a flyer, two-sided. One-sided had some of our comparable districts in our area, amount of state funding per pupil, and then average cost per pupil, and then ranking in the state. And so that really opened some eyes because they see, oh wow, you spent 17,000 on average. Yeah, that's 17,000 on the low end for our comparables and those around us. And then they were amazed to see that places like Hudson get more pure pupil funding from the state than we do. You know, we come in at about $2,900. So that is just a conversation starter.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, it had I think it's pretty much had all 32 districts in the county and their effective millage. And on that list, we're at the bottom, not the bottom, but we're like within 5 of the bottom of the lowest effective millage, but we're also one of the highest achieving school districts in the county.
And I mean, if you talk to the man on the street, they will tell you that, oh no, we pay some of it.
Highest
Highest
taxes,
taxes
Oh, yes.
in the county.
right, but the effective millage, we are very,
Right.
very low.
Yeah,
We're half of, again,
yeah.
Craig doesn't like when I say ballpark, right? But we're at like half of what Shaker Heights is effective
Right,
millage.
Shaker.
well, that's, I see, for sure, for Shaker.
Oh, you're okay with
But
that?
I'm okay with that, no, but I think also in most communities, and that's where I think sometimes this gets, which I've been highlighting in some of the Taxpayer Tuesday things or whatever, but it's that people need to understand that in most communities, the school district is closer to 60% or 62% of your tax bill. And in these communities, it's actually closer to 50%. because there are other services, especially in Brecksville, that have. That's built into your tax bill. So yes, it could be a lot, but at least the schools portion in general, as a generality, it's a little bit on the lower side than it is in a lot of communities. That edge up towards 60 to 65%, whereas ours is less. So, so it could be other services, as we've talked about, that people need to understand their tax bill and look at them.
Yeah.
So they understand where it's all coming from and going to.
So. As we begun the conversation, and I have to tell you that I kind of feel like it's been a continued conversation since November for me and probably for Mr. Chase as well, because, you know, we were talking about this and getting asked questions about this when we were campaigning. But as we now are having as a board a formal conversation, what is the next step? How does, because as a board member, I've not been part of a levy. So what happens next? I know Mr. Dosen has been, where as we continue to have the conversations, eventually a decision is gonna need to get made. And I'm a huge fan of forward thinking and forward planning. And to me, a year away is not a lot of time. So, you know, what happens next? What do we do?
Well, what you were talking about in terms of the slide that.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
The information.
you know. Jeff and Craig have brought this up, right, with enough runway for us to start discussing it and, you know, and. Eventually, you know, word's gonna get out and start, you know, I have articles, people plug into the meeting and say, okay, we're starting to talk about a levy. You know, nothing's been decided, but you know, we're talking about, you know, potentially 5.9 mil, you know, in spring of 27. So, you know, we need to work on, and when I say we, you know, need to work on a game plan of like, what does this look like in terms of. That's why I mentioned earlier, like as a board, we need to start thinking about what else do we need? We need to see more information and how is that information presented so that we can get a comfort level to figure out, you know, what direction we're gonna head.
And you'll really help us with the frequently asked questions. And that's what you're saying. What you would need is what the community needs. We have it all.
Yeah.
We can continue to dish it out, but we want to make sure we're hitting those hot spots that you're going to be. And I'd like, Craig, you know it a little better than I, so I'm turn this over to you, but there's a mechanical issue as to when we do resolutions to hit the ballot in the spring of 27. So as he was saying, it's gonna be around that December, January.
Yeah.
Because the deadlines are so many days out from the election, just like, you know, when you ran for board. So we'll see some of those mechanical resolutions come up late fall, early winter, I think.
And there, I mean, we'll need, and I don't, to my knowledge, we don't have a levy chair.
No,
So
not
right
right
now,
now.
so like if you all know people, they need a levy chair, like a treasurer, those types of
Which
things.
we have secured, I got this one, so we have secured a treasurer, so Bruce McCrod had done it for a long time.
Excellent.
Just, it was time for him to unplug, and we thank him for his service, and it took some members about a year to find a replacement. And his name's escaping me at the moment from the foundation. No, not Keith, the treasurer, Brian.
Banjack.
Banjack, Brian
Brian
Banjack is going to
He
serve
was
as
on the
treasurer.
Okay.
I've also had community members who participated in the last go around, both in operating money and bond issue, who have expressed an interest in helping again. And some of those leadership positions. So if you were around during those times, you know who some of those players are, familiar faces from foundations, maybe PSO, maybe former board member. I mean, so we,
Sean had retired.
yeah, so we have had some community members already express to us. We know you're gonna go sooner or later, and we'd be willing to help again.
So that's a piece of it, is obviously doing the campaign for that part of it, and then also, so there are two resolutions. One will be to get the authorization to certify, so then once the board passes that, I take that to the county auditor, they have to certify the amount. Then you do a notice to proceed, a resolution to proceed. And then that's what gets on the official ballot language, and we will have to look at what that looks like, because as you know, I mean, I haven't done one of these in a while, because ours was a permanent improvement levy when I was at my former district. But they've changed the ballot language,
Right.
which they say has clarified things, which has just made it more confusing for people, maybe on purpose, I don't know. But we're gonna have to do it, that's a part of like what we have to be educating people on, is that what they may have seen, because this community hasn't seen it in so long, is that the ballot language has changed. And so we've got to be careful, so we educate, so they understand what they're reading when they're going to vote. Because that'll be a little bit different than what they've seen in the past.
And different how, or is it too complicated to explain?
It's kind of complicated to explain, but it's how it's the wording and it relates to assessed valuation or whatever. There's some different language pieces that they say makes it easier, but most people that have gone to the ballot to vote say it's actually more confusing. how they're
So
listing
some of
it.
the state legislators believe that we weren't clear, we being public educators. Clear as to how much it actually costs on the ballot. But if those state legislators would participate in a levy, campaign, they would know that we're crystal clear about how much it costs. But so the language now they put on the ballot issue, which I've seen a couple of times, in my community does, it makes it clear to me, Craig, we understand it, but for the common community member, it's like, well, that's not what the district says is gonna cost me. And not that it's more or less, it's just not the same ring. Doesn't ring the same. Right.
And I think their most recent language actually says we have to list our cash balance percentage, I think. At least it was on there, right? Those are the things we have to like look at
Yeah.
because that was one of the changes they were proposing. As well. And again, that's about education because people need to understand our board policy and best practice is 90 days. And we're not skirting that far above it, right? I mean, the whole point is not to go below 90 days, because to go to below 90 days to then go above, you've got to then ask for more.
And it's everything's relative, so just like that gentleman that was at coffee chat, when he heard $17,000 per student, about knocked him out of the chair. When someone goes to see we have a cash balance of $23 million, they're like, well, what do they need more money for? They don't realize how much one payroll is for us. Or how much we spend in health benefits. So it's just the education piece, and then when you have to list some of those things on the ballot, when that's not the typical language that people are used to seeing, it just gets confusing.
Yeah,
So
that'll be a piece of education as well.
Can I ask one more clarifying question, since we went over the campus master plan, and people will continue to ask us about it? The idea is, like, your recommendation is to just do operating, and campus master plan continues to be a dream into the future.
well, I think I'll speak for me personally. I don't want to speak for Craig, his 2 cents, but I'm just in the whole landscape of school funding right now. I don't want to be that superintendent treasurer listing what positions we're going to eliminate because we aren't successful on a property tax measure. So it's hard for me to get super excited about campaigning for a permanent improvement levy, a bond issue, or anything like that to support the campus master plan, because there's just so much uncertainty right now. But I will tell you, I hear from community members that say you need to put it out there and you need to give us a choice as well. So that's some of the conversation between now and if it's November, because it's a 2-month process to get onto the ballot in May. So that's part of that process. Like, do you do hypothetically operating 5.9 mil levy, combined issue, because you can still do a combined maybe, well, anyway, a small permanent improvement levy of maybe 1 mil. And then use something known as COPS, which is a certificate of participation, essentially layman's term, borrow against that future income to pay for a portion of the campus master plan. So that's 5.9 mil of operating, 1 mil of permanent improvement that would allow us to borrow against to do a large SWAT, not all. It wouldn't be all at all. It wouldn't be very much of the campus plan, but it would definitely make a dent in some of the larger portions being the middle school. So that's an option. But at this point, it's just hard to get excited about that part. And that pains me a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I know the work we put into it, but we gotta educate kids first.
No, I mean, because we're all getting asked about the campus master plan,
Yep.
you guys get asked about the campus master plan all the time, and just so that
Right.
people know, like, it's still on the horizon, but the priority, like you said, is to take care of.
Because we could always go 5.9 operating in the spring of 27. Hypothetical, for those that are tuning in or listening or reporting off of this, hypothetical. 5.9 in spring of 27, and you can go back a year after that in May of 28 and ask for a permanent improvement of 1 mil or something, so that they're separate. Because the last thing you do is, the other piece of it is strategy wise, I don't want to go to the ballot with people who will support us for 5.9 mil operating, but will vote no because of the 1 mil permanent improvement. So it's just like, maybe we gotta separate them.
And it's a different option than some of the stuff we've talked about with, so I would agree, it's a different avenue that you can look at on the permanent improvement aspect of doing this, which actually would be lower than potentially doing a bond issue. Bond issues are typically not as successful than as a permanent improvement levy. We have 2 permanent improvement levies for 1 mil each, which are super helpful. But then the nice thing is that if you do that at some point, that actually just stays on necessarily through after the cops are paid back. There's obviously a cost of borrowing too in any of those situations, but it's not we've had some rough numbers. It's not a bad option in comparison to a bond. So it's nice to have different things that we can eventually show you guys. And some to look at as alternatives that the community might be more supportive of as
My
well.
previous lifetime, in a county that had a sales tax that went towards the schools. Almost all of those school districts in that county used COPS, certificate of participation, to borrow against their tax revenue that was coming in. Because that was permanent improvement anyway, but they borrowed against it. In one community, they built 2 brand new elementary buildings, not asking for a dime for their communities, because they were leveraging their sales tax dollars that were coming in every year to do a COPS. Which gave them the funding up front to pay, and then, they're paying it back. So in that county in particular that has a sales tax, the only county in the state of Ohio, they use COPS quite a bit.
And I think that, and technically speaking, we could use them for what we have now, but the problem with that is, I would not ever recommend it, to be honest, is like if you take out a TAN or you take out COPS against our current permanent improvement, this gentleman's not gonna be very happy. Because you have to use that money to pay back the debt. And so then our
Yeah.
actual permanent improvement that we use every year right now at $1.8 million is gone.
That has helped keep the middle schools.
So then you're just creating problems somewhere else. And there's a lot of school districts that do this. And that's where it's really unfortunate, because they want something so bad sometimes that they do something like this to get that big item or whatever they need. And then all of a sudden, I think everyone finally realizes, well, now what do we do? Because now we have no money for roofs, we have no money for asphalt, we have no money for tennis courts or turf or whatever it is. So if you're gonna look at something specifically separate that could potentially fund it, that's perfect. Like that's different in terms of like being able to pay for it, because then you've got the guaranteed revenue stream. It's all separate, and it can work out as an option.
Well, and Jeff, to your point, I go back to amplify that whole element of uncertainty.
Mhm.
We are just living in such uncertain times right now. And that's why trying to secure operating money, which hopefully, lasts, 8+ years. It's hard. And so, the campus master plan, perhaps there's some revenue down the road that comes in through some other means that allows us to do some of it. But if not, securing the operating funds, and then, going back for a smaller bite of the apple, maybe later, or campus master plan, maybe that, maybe that sequencing makes the most sense.
Awesome.
Well, thank you. Thank you for at least kicking off and getting out this conversation. It all goes into the education of our community. And different individuals will pick up from this board meeting, will be reported out, and the conversation will just begin ramping up. Just continue to write down those FAQs and questions as people ask you, so that we can prepare and bring the data together to answer it in a very concise way. And we'll just continue to march down this road. Craig and I are going to operate off of what our recommendation is. But again, that doesn't become official until you take board action, which will be late fall, early winter at that point. So there's still lots of time to discuss. And even if we need to adjust course, we could. But the clock is ticking, and our cash balance is beginning to go the direction that we need to do something about it.
And can I ask one more question before we stop? You said, Craig, board members can do anything when it comes. I know I'm paraphrasing you, you guys have more restrictions, but
I will.
is that right? I thought that there was some restrictions on us.
While you're at a board meeting, I
Oh,
believe.
okay.
I think it's while you're
Right,
board meeting,
right.
that's correct. Yeah, right now. No, one of the examples they were talking about, that was like treasurer and superintendent hosting a town hall. Is that sometimes it's like, well, you can't do that anymore, but you can host a town hall in like the auditorium. Because,
And I would absolutely still challenge and push back that I'm gonna host a town hall. Because I've hosted town halls prior to being on the ballot. And I will also be coming from a point of educating. I won't be up there wearing my shirt to vote yes, and everybody needs to vote yes. I'm gonna say, here's the facts. And so, so yes, but Craig and I are limited in how we can communicate that message. Because we're on the clock 24/7, 365 according to the state on.
correct.
And we want to present a united front too, I think, as forward, if we're gonna do town halls, it would be very cool. to have-
So matching t-shirts and stuff.
Whatever it would take, but certainly a united front.
Yeah, and I think that's also Craig and I's job to present, that the district is educated and positioned to provide accurate information, and we'll be coming from that angle of not begging people to vote yes, we're gonna give you a reason to vote yes. Dave Knight, who was one of my early mentors, he said, every day, Jeff, that you get out of the car at work, you're selling a levy by what you do every day. You don't wait until you're on the ballot.
Right.
It's how we respond to community members, how we talk to parents, what we offer our kids in the classroom. That's the return on investment. And we just have to continue to promote that.
Right.
Good.
Anything else? All right, item 3, closing items. 3A, resolved to adjourn the meeting. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Roll call.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mrs. Gaelic,
Yes.
Mrs. Whitekowski,
Yes.
Ms. O'Meara,
Yes.
Mr. Dosen.
Yes, meeting is now adjourned. Great evening, everyone.
Middle.